What's good, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Stage. This is where I get a chance to talk to people who help run events you guys attend. This week, we have Joycey, who has basically helped create one of the biggest Smash majors in the UK. Joycey, you can correct me if I'm wrong there. But yeah, Joycey, welcome to the show. Welcome to the episode, not even the show. For people that don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Elliot, tag is Joycey. I've been in Smash UK for the best part of 9 years now, so it'll be 9 years in November. Done a little bit of everything, sort of mainly competing and commentating. I started seriously commentating in 2017 in Smash 4 and then carried it on to Smash Ultimate. And then in terms of helping with commentary rosters, it's something that I've done for a few of the Team Regen events sort of in the past year or so. So I helped with Regen 2023, Invasion earlier this year, and then Regen 2024. But yeah, I've been around for quite a bit of time, and yeah, sort of commentary is my main sort of fire, so to speak.
Perfect. Awesome. So in the Smash community, in the scene for 9 years, give or take, probably slightly more. We always give ourselves a little bit less time than what we think we say, right? So within those 9 years, from Smash 4 onwards, like, what's your history with Smash 4 and onwards? Like, how did you get from playing Smash 4 to being a commentator to helping Regen out in hiring, I guess is the correct term here, commentators?
Well, that's right. Where do we start? So the first major tournament I remember watching, like I've done the classic thing where one of the first games I remember playing was Melee. I played it very casually with friends, Melee into Brawl into like Smash 4 when it came out. And I remember my friend and I watching Apex 2015. That was like the big first tournament that we both watched. And we both had this thought of, well, if there are these big competitive tournaments in the US, there might be some bits in the UK. And I remember at the time that my friend dropped me a message a couple of weeks later saying, hey, there's a tournament in Bristol, which was about halfway between where we were both going to university.
Okay.
Let's hit it up. We're both free on the weekend. So we both traveled there. And I know it's pretty stereotypical to say that like you either catch the bug or you don't, but I remember going something like, it was like round robin pools, and I went like 2 and 3, and then I went like 0-2 an amateur bracket, because you always think that you're sort of like the hot stuff when you start playing, and then you meet actual competitive players and you get your ass handed to you. But it was the start of it, and I really, really sort of caught the bug, so to speak. In terms of the commentary side of things, I kind of dabbled in it like a couple of years later, sort of end of 2016. I studied abroad in Canada for a while, in a city in Ontario called London, weirdly enough. And they had, their weeklies were quite big, their monthlies were particularly big, and they had, like open mic commentary. And I thought, that's something that I've like wanted to do for a while. And I had the opportunity to kind of, give it a shot and see if I liked it. And then I remember my first big commentary block was at the first New Era in Smash 4, so also a Team Regen event, one of their first, because one of the commentators that was supposed to do, I think it was top 32.
Sure.
But they made top 32 last minute, so they were kind of scrambling to find someone, and like people knew that I'd like commentated a bit, so they were like, oh, Joycey, you can jump on the mic. And I got some quite nice feedback, and I just kind of carried on from there. So I did, like, a lot of different events from then going into Ultimate. I did the same thing. I remember really struggling from a competitor standpoint to kind of stick with Ultimate.
Okay.
I remember it was probably about 3 or 4 years to actually enjoy the competing side of things, but commentary was something that I always like really stuck with. And I remember myself and Smar in particular, it was over the lockdown period during the pandemic, we really made an effort to commentate as much as we could. And, similar to what people do with competing, like VOD reviews and discussions and like just trying to get as much as possible done.
Yeah.
And we both really improved, and then started doing sort of bigger and bigger tournaments post-pandemic. And kind of here we are, really.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah.
And then in terms of the organising side of things, it started... I kind of helped a bit informally, sort of at the start of 2023.
Okay.
I remember at the time, I think it might have been New Era 3 that I helped with to start with, but it was very much at the time I was living with my friend Dan, also known as Degala in Smash UK. And he used to be the person in Team Regen who did the commentary schedules.
Okay.
And when he was sort of looking through all the applicants and deciding things, he would, run combinations by me and run different people by me, and he'd ask me different bits and pieces in sort of areas that he didn't know as much. So it started more so as like an informal, almost like half a favor, kind of just a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And then my role within that sort of grew and grew more so, where when it came to Regen 2023, I was asked in a more formal capacity to be part of the commentary scheduling team.
Amazing.
With Degala still at the helm, but it was me and a couple of others as well.
Yeah. Like it's a big show, so you're going to need a lot of help, a lot of volunteering, and a lot of people just to say yes or no to, right? So that's, sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, carry on.
And it was that event where Degala stepped down from Team Regen. So I was, from there, asked by Team Regen again. It just kind of continued more formally.
Yeah.
And then particularly Regen, that's just gone, Regen 2024. I was sort of, I feel like I could confidently call myself sort of like, the head of the commentary team, so to speak. Whereas the past few times it felt like I was helping out the others take the helm. I feel like with this event, they sort of handed it over to me and said, we trust you well enough to put together a roster.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I wasn't alone in that. They helped with, but certainly I think I put in the most hours out of the rest of the commentary team when it came to the schedule. So yeah, it's been a long old journey.
Long old journey. So from assistant to actually being head of commentary for Team Regen, and the Regen events of this year, which was an amazing event. For those that are listening, and for those that are watching, if you want to catch my pictures, at least from the Team Regen event this year in Leicester, check out the description. I will drop a link in there for those pictures. So I'm going to rewind slightly with you getting into Smash 4, into a few years into Ultimate, and then commentating and basically hitting up a open mic commentary slot. Were you always this eloquent in speaking? So I know it's through commentators, and the general vibe nowadays in this current era of commentary is that you don't swear. This podcast not being a commentary block for yourself, you are allowed to swear, by the way. So when you said what the frick and everything else, I picked up on, you don't swear. That's perfectly fine. You are a professional. I am not. So yeah, where do you learn how to commentate? You've mentioned, obviously during the pandemic where you and Smile were just locking in, watching all these videos, doing all this research, doing all the homework as such. But before that, you had to learn somewhere of where to commentate and how to commentate. So what was your method in doing that? You could also turn around and say I was just always this eloquent on the mic. I was just a natural born yapper.
I think in terms of me right at the start, I think I've always been quite well spoken, and I've always been quite good at if I have an idea, I can communicate it quite well, which made me think that I was quite a natural fit for commentary. That being said, it's only when you kind of jump on the mic for the first time that I think the way that I like to word it is that there isn't such thing as a right way to commentate, but there are definitely wrong ways to commentate.
Yeah.
And for example, that block that I hopped on, that top 32, I remember the co-commentator they had, and he was very, very well established within the UK and Europe as well.
Okay.
And we sat down and we had this block, and the first thing, which I think is just a flat everyone should do this if you want to improve is you ask for feedback in the moment. Like, ask off the top of your head, is there anything I could have done better? Is there anything that you liked? And I remember him saying, like, he was like, yeah, like you said some really good things, and I really like the way that you worded certain bits, but it felt like there was this like bubbling tension of like, there's something you really want to say that isn't as nice. So I said, oh, is there anything I can improve? And he immediately was like, oh my fucking God, stop interrupting me. And I just interrupt, and I look back on that block, and it was like every time that he had a good point to make, if I had something to say, I'd just say it, not considering that he was in the middle of a sentence. And it was just one of those things which really opened my eyes to like, you can't just sit down and talk. You've got to, there are ways of like commentating. There's sort of like, there's etiquette and there's techniques that you need to learn. So from there, I watched a lot of like really professional commentators, both. So like the two games were also like Smash 4. In particular, I think Coney was a big inspiration to me. I really liked his commentary style. I really liked his humor. And then I also watched a lot of Melee as well. And I think Scar was a big inspiration to me. And in particular, the way that he likes to weave storylines.
Okay.
I think he's probably, again, I come from a very ignorant background of I don't watch many fighting games or many other esports.
Totally fine.
Anybody watching, do forgive me. But I think Scar is single-handedly one of the best commentators at like really driving home the stakes of a set, like demonstrating that it's not just if this player wins, they advance in bracket, and then this person goes home. It's, what's the set history between them? What does this tournament series mean? And between these two players in particular, what would it mean for this person to continue? What would it mean for the storylines of the tournament, for the year, for the whole game? And I really took inspiration from that. But I think in terms of just getting better and getting to where I am, it's just a lot of asking for advice and working with different people as well. I think there's like, going back to that pandemic time, I remember Smara and I worked together a lot. And I think that sometimes it's very easy to think, well, they're a static duo. They're going to work really well together. Let's put them together. It's easy. It's nice. It's safe. But I think if you want to really, elevate yourself onto that next level, you need to be used to working with lots of different people and seeing how your styles merge together, and like not being afraid again to ask for that feedback, particularly if they're, quote unquote, a stronger commentator than you.
Sure.
Like, I think it's really, really important to be able to, put your ego to one side, ask for that feedback, and then implement it.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest one for me, I think, in terms of how I improved as a commentator.
Fair. And that last point there is probably the most important part to me personally, is whilst you can ask for feedback and obviously, putting your ego aside and having to ask that question in the first place, amazing work. But there's asking the question and then listening and acting on the answer, because that's two different things, right? Responding to the answer and going, yeah, okay, this is what I did wrong. Like, I'm interrupting you. I'll check back the tapes. Is it just me, or was they actually saying something with proof? That makes sense. That's cool. Commentating with numerous other co-commentators, right? That is, you have to do that. Otherwise, you do get a pair of commentators who will be great together. They just work off each other quite well. But sometimes, God forbid, you don't get the same event, and so you don't get your same commentator, and that's a shame. But then you have so many other people to work with, and sometimes you're just gonna have to make sure you can be flexible enough to work with these other people, right?
Yeah, 100%. We've had it before where, like, in the few events that I've kind of been working schedules with, we've had people where, like, one half of a static duo have worked well together, but only one of them, they've worked well together, but only one of them's, like, applied for it.
Sure.
And there's been this theory, that, like, these thoughts in the back of the mind of, like, right, well, I know what you're like with this one person. You're brilliant. But do I risk putting you with, like, other people that maybe you don't gel as well with, particularly at bigger events.
Yeah.
And I'll happily go into it later, but like I think it's the how much of a risk do I want to take on somebody who is really good with one person but maybe hasn't quite established themselves with others. I think it's a good way to like get yourself up to a certain point.
Sure.
I think it's like it's nice to work with the same person and push each other and be honest with each other and get to that point. And then there does come a point, like Smar and I ended up for about a year requesting, just please don't put us together, because just because people would. A lot of other TOs would be like, oh, Smar and Joycey are going to be at the event. Cool, we'll put them on for top 16. We'll put them on for top 8. But it was getting to the point where it was like, we felt we'd hit our limits with each other for now. Let's work with other people, work with different people. And then, like, now it's different. Like, we haven't had a lot together in a while. But we've both grown so much since 2020 that it's no issue if we're put together anymore. But there genuinely was a period where we both had to go, it's not personal to each other, but if we want to get like even better than we are, we need to work with different people.
It's not you, it's me. I just want to see other people. Like, I'll come back to you eventually, but I just need some space to find myself. Like, let's travel. Yeah, no, I get you. No, that's cool. And yeah, no, 100%. Like, Smile's a great guy as well. So, really, Joycey, the next a question I have is, like, with the 9 years of events you've been to, say 8 years of commentary as such, what are you most known for? Could be commentary, could be your competitive games. But what would you say you are most known for in the Smash scene?
Oh, that's a very good question. It probably is commentary. I would say nowadays it's definitely commentary. Sure. And I think not just in terms of being a commentator, but I think like I feel like Yeet Smash UK in terms of commentary has really, really grown in the past 5 or so years.
Okay.
And I think I'm not going to claim full credit for that because there are so many wonderful people that have contributed to that. I think in particular we have a UK commentary Discord that Chili and Smart both, founded and created and have looked after, and it's really helped people grow. But I think I've made a real effort to push people to improve and to ask for feedback in particular. I think is something that I'm quite known for, I would say. Cool. I think, it makes me happy when commentators come to me for advice. And I like to think that I'm approachable enough to the point where anybody, no matter their skill level, could come to me and ask me for either advice or feedback or just any kind of question. I think also, I think that's the main one. Fair. Like, I don't think I was quite ever good enough at competing to like quite be known for it. Sure. I think the moment that I realized that I wasn't quite known for being a competitor is, I forget what it was, but it was a couple of years ago on Twitter.
Sure.
And like somebody from Smash UK, we were talking about like mains and characters and bits and pieces like that.
Yeah.
And I made a comment about my main. So I've made Yoshi since the very start of competing. So it's been 9 years, pretty much solo Yoshi.
Nice.
All the way through. And somebody was like, I don't know why, but I thought you were a Falcon main. And I was like, I've never spoken about Falcon. I've never played Falcon in bracket. So I was immediately like, okay, clearly if my lasting competitive impression on someone is you play a character you've never touched, clearly competing is not exactly what I'm known for. But I think certainly my commentary, and I think I would like to think that I've helped kind of push and raise the bar across Smash UK in terms of commentary. Again, I might be talking out my arse.
No, perfect. No, that's fine. No.
A lot of other people have, we have so many good commentators in the UK. But yeah, I would like to think that through giving feedback and being honest with people, that I've kind of helped foster that environment where people can improve.
No, that's a good thing, and that is definitely the vibe we're going for. And staying on that vibe, really, the like with all of that, and people are being approachable, being able to be being approachable, being friendly, people coming to you, asking questions, asking for feedback, asking on how they improve and how you yourself improve in return for that. Like, what do you define as success then? When people ask you these questions, always, if you ask yourself this question, like, what would you define as success? But if I could speak, this is why I'm not a commentator.
I think with commentary, it's like competing in that you kind of set your own goals. I think that I've learned from talking to a lot of different people when it comes to commentary. And I've noticed it a lot when competing, but then when speaking commentary as well, there are the parallels, is that not everybody's trying to be the best person in the world.
Sure.
Not everybody's trying to be the best player in the world. And similarly, some people aren't trying to be the best commentator in the world. And I think successful people is kind of what you define it as. Like, there are some people that are trying to be the best commentators in the world, commentate at the biggest events, get the highest blocks, work with the best people. There are some people that just hop on the mic because they enjoy it and it's fun. And they just, they don't necessarily want to get crazy good at commentary. They don't necessarily want to put in the grind to become the best commentator in the UK, say. It's just that they enjoy it and it's something that they like to do at events here and there. So I think success on that end, I think, is very much what you make it. I think for me personally, like, my last goal for commentary is to work in the US. I think that would be a really big goal for me. But again, there are some commentators that are, a lot of people I see are like, by the end of this year, I want to work a Team Regen event. It's all about the goals that you set yourself. And then I think in terms of me giving feedback to others, I think as long as, like, I just want people to get, like, better. And I think but in the same vein, I don't want to, somebody come to me for advice and then I basically completely shit on them and say, like, you've got, like, these 10 points that you need to work on. I think it's about, like, giving that feedback so they know where to go next, but also not completely and utterly disheartening someone where they're going to be like, well, what's the point? Because, like, so many people I give feedback and I say, like, you need to do this. And I only know that because I did that. There are, like, commentators that are, very young to the scene, very new to the scene.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to turn around and be like, look, mate, you've been in the scene for 3 years. If in 6 years' time, you're going to be potentially where I am, but you could be further ahead than me. Like, it's been a very, very slow journey. Like, I didn't become one of the best in the UK overnight. It took a very long time. And I think it's just keeping people in that mindset of, like, it can be a long journey. It can be, there are ups and downs, but you've just got to, keep your eye on the prize, so to speak.
Yeah, keep your eye on the prize. Keep going. Like, it is, it's a marathon, not a sprint, definitely. So what I guess I took from your answer there really is that you want to work a US event.
Ideally, yes. That'd be
as one of your goals, as one of your bullet points to be not to be successful, but a success of your career is to work a US event. I'm not saying a major just yet because that's going to lead on to our next question. A US event like the Big House or Summit, if Summit was still existing, and Riptide, those events. So that makes sense. That's cool. And then speaking of events, like, this conversation came up last night in a group chat I was in. What do you class as a major? So before you answer that question, I will backtrack again slightly whilst you think of this. You said you went to study abroad in Canada for a full year. You did mention monthlies. Obviously, there are weeklies. So at the moment, what I have gathered, there's weeklies, there's monthlies, there's regionals, there's majors, and for everyone else, for fighting games, really, there's, I'm going to say, fighting game majors with pro tours, or just a pro tour event in general. So, like, what do you class as a major event for the Smash community?
I think it's really any kind of event that has a lot of top talent, and I think that definition can be flexible. I think like an EU major, I think of something like Regen last year, or even Regen this year. This year was a bit different because we had like some US talent. Obviously, we had like Aleo and Big Boss were there as well. But like, when you've got like the bulk of that scene in like one tournament, I think it is like the top level. Obviously, not with discounting like invitationals and things, because that's obviously in its own little group. But like, if you've got like a good amount of people plus a lot of like top level players there, I think that would kind of come under the banner of major to me. Okay. I'm not the biggest fan. Like, sometimes I see all the like Twitter discourse of what counts as a major and what doesn't count as a major, and like the points-based system, and maybe it's just because I've been in the scene for a very long time, but I kind of just roll my eyes at it a bit.
We're all a bit jaded with the years that go on us. We're all a bit jaded. Yeah,
it's just a bit like like it's like, does it matter if it's a B or a B plus or like an A minus? It's like, it's so like, if there's a lot of good people and a lot of people want to tune in, then like, to me, that's like a tournament worth watching. Or whether that classes as a major or not is kind of much of a muchness, really.
Sure. No, that's fine. Sure. I asked that question because of the position you're in. You are helping create the UK's largest Smash event with Regen. So getting your thoughts on that and it's just thoughts, right? It's an opinion. Opinion isn't fact. It's just what we feel at the time. And so, yeah, I'm in agreement. Like, a major doesn't matter what size. Well, I say it doesn't matter what size. A major is, a large group of people, and to me, especially in the fighting game scene, would have a high number of international talent that travels, or just in general, a lot of people that would travel to the event for that specific reason. So, Joycey, we're on to the meat of the conversation now. You helping Regen get commentators into specific slots, getting them to apply. So, what do you look for in a commentator to be at your event? Doesn't matter if it's Regen. Just, this is Joycey's event. You've put out the call for commentators. People are putting in something. What is that something? Is it a reel? Is it a resume for on CV? Like, what are you looking for?
That's a huge question. That's a huge question. So I think the first thing, I think in terms of application, so sure. and I mean this at any sort of event, really. Sure. It's just, to me, your application it's a bit like a job interview. It's a bit like you've handed in your CV and you've put on basically like your experience and like your best bits and what you can bring to the table. I think reels are very, very quick and convenient. I like a good commentary reel. And if you can summarize the kind of commentator that you're going to be in, your skill set, in like a 3-4 minute video, that's beautiful. I think what a lot of people, at least from my experience from the past, like doing this for sort of 3 events now, I think people forget that you are one of, so like Regen 2024 had about 65, 70 applicants. Regen 2023 had a few more than that, around 80, 85.
Okay.
And using this event as a specific thing,
sure.
When I was helping out with this, I was balancing a 40-hour-a-week job and I was finishing up a master's degree dissertation.
Oh, congratulations.
So thank you. And my point with that being is that I had to spread my time, and what limited time I had was going onto these applications. I'm a big fan of people making my life a lot easier. Reels are not necessary all the time, at least for me.
Okay.
Obviously, other TOs and other events say otherwise.
Yeah.
But for me, a reel is not necessary. A good VOD is fine, but remember that you've got to put forward your best work.
Yes.
And in an ideal world, I just want to be able to click a link and see the work that you're giving me.
Yeah.
I've had some people say, I had one commentator. So, like on the flip end of things, I had somebody put that they weren't from England, they were from a different country, but they said all events in this country, and that was it. There were no names of the events, there were no VODs for the events, there was no even links to the brackets. It was just, in this country, I commentate events. Go and find them. And to me, it's like,
Sorry.
For all, you wrote 3 words.
Yes.
If I put in as much effort for you as you've put in for me, like it was just an instant reject, because in my head it's like I haven't got time to go rummaging around for people, because there are a lot of different applicants. I've got a lot of other things going on, and like, don't get it twisted. Like I try and put in a good amount of time to everybody's application, but in the same vein, it's like another one was they said, "Oh, I've commentated 4 and 5 of a certain series of weeklies." In fact, I could tell you, it was Monday Meltdowns. That Monday Meltdown. I said, I've done 4 or 5 that Monday Meltdowns.
Sure.
4 or 5 out of, I'm pretty sure I saw yesterday on Twitter,
Quite a few.
That Monday Meltdown is currently on event number like 370 something.
Yeah, it's been going.
They didn't put which ones either. They just put 4 or 5 out of them. And in my head, it's like, okay, is this person expecting me to go through all 300 events? All through, Meltdown starts at 7, finishes at midnight, 300 and something 5-hour VODs to try and find them. It's just, like, to me, it's like, I'm not going to do it. It's like handing in a CV and saying that, like, I've worked in a shop, and you don't say what shop, and you don't say how long for, and you don't say when you did it, and you don't say, it's about, like, please make my life easier, because it will make it, like, you'll simply have more chance of getting picked, because, if I don't have to go rummaging through and you've got the best bits right there, then that is, like, it's just so much easier for everyone involved.
100%. Yeah, that's 3-4 minute reel. There's your answer, guys. Yeah. Put one in.
But again, VODs are fine. VODs are absolutely fine. Another thing with VODs, and on that topic, is that another big bit of advice I have for anybody doing an application is assume I have no idea who you are, because I've had it before where somebody sent me like 2 or 3 VODs, and like the commentator cam never goes on, and the commentators don't say who they are.
Sure. And
if I've not heard of either of you, I don't actually know which one of you is who.
Yep.
The easiest way for me that I like to do a lot is, if there's like a difference in pitch of voice, say, I'm the higher pitched one, I'm the lower pitched one. Another guaranteed one is put in there, the first thing I say is, and then the first sentence that you said, because immediately it's like, right, you're that person. Like, sometimes I will go through, but sometimes I won't. And it's like, again, it's that making your life easier. And I'm not willing to take a risk on, because if I really like one commentator, but I'm not a bigger fan of the other, and I don't know which one of them you are, I'm not going to take that risk, particularly on an event like Regen.
Yeah. For sure. With that scenario, actually, which raises a really good question. For me personally, not because I'm a commentator, but because I'm a photographer, would these applications from other commentators coming in for a Regen, for a Smash event in general that you are basically building out the commentary roster for, would it benefit them to put in a headshot so that you know what they look like? Not that it may matter because they are on the mic and commentating, but would the head joint help?
Truth be told, probably not.
Fair.
The only reason why I say that is because 9 times out of 10, if you've just sent me a VOD and if it cuts to the commentator account, which is where I would normally look, your face is going to be there anyway, and ideally your tag is underneath there as well. But I think it like very, very, it would have to be a scenario where, you know, for example, like they had the commentator cameras but didn't say who the commentators were.
Yeah.
I think then it would be. But I think for the most part, I think, like, I mean, it'd be a nice touch, but I don't think it's like entirely necessary.
No, not from,
from my perspective.
No, of course. So commentary reel or a VOD, you know, 3 or 4 minutes long, telling you which person, which pitch of voice, if you don't get shown, like basically if you put in 3 words saying, I've commentated before, your response, Joycey, will be, cool, go away. Right?
Maybe not as harsh, but in a nice way. Yeah, it's just about, like, again, assume I don't know anything about you.
Yeah.
Because particularly if you're, like, don't get me wrong, sometimes I see an application come in and I know exactly who they are. I've spoke to them 1,001 times. You know, we've had drinks together. You know, I've shared a hotel room with them, whatever. But particularly if you're applying to like I find a lot with like international commentators, I think it's a really important thing because it's just, if I can just think to myself, right, okay, I'm going to click on the VOD and they say this first, cool, that's who they are.
Yeah.
Life is so much easier. And like, even if, you know, as harsh as it sounds, unless you're like a super duper established commentator, if you're on the up and up, there is a chance that, you know, I don't tune into Smash tournaments too often. Sadly, my work schedule doesn't really let me.
Yeah.
So in terms of those, like, maybe like smaller European events, which, you know, by the time top 8's finished, I've just got home from work, I may not have had a chance to hear you commentate.
Yeah.
So assume I don't know who you are. And it just makes life a lot easier because, again, like, I was talking about this with a couple of people a few weeks back, but like I think that I went through, you know, a lot of the applications by myself, 65 odd people. But I think about commentary, you know, like organizers like Damascus who are looking at like multiple games for a you know, event like UFA. And obviously I would certainly hope it doesn't completely fall on him, but to think about the workload that he has to go through, you know, he's not going to have the time to, you know, go through and hunt down VODs and, you know, go through Twitch VODs that are 5 hours long to try and find the point where you're speaking. It's like, just do absolutely everything to just make people's lives easier and you're probably going to find a bit more success, is my sort of take on things.
That's fair. No, that makes 100% sense, right? It's why we have portfolios and why we do the legwork, so that when we do want to get hired for other jobs and other gigs, like it's easy to look at and see, like, cool, what have people done, what have you done? And that goes a long way in general life, I think, especially the CVs.
100%.
Like your analogy of having a CV and just saying you've worked at a shop without telling what time and what shop and where and whatnot is perfectly valid. It's crazy. So with Reels, one thing I have spoken with other commentators about, especially even if they don't get, even if they're hired or if they don't get hired, you know, they sometimes publish their Reels on YouTube. This is where I get tongue twisted. And it's set to private, which is perfectly fine. You know, it's a private link. You send it to yourself, Joycey. They send it to yourself, and they assume you would click on that link and view it. Sometimes there are always 0 views, and basically it looks like, and there is no response from yourself to say yes or no. Like, obviously, with you're a one-man band, you're doing this by yourself at this moment in time, right, Joycey? 80-ish applicants, 4 to 5 minute long reels, assuming all 80 people have sent you a reel and done the legwork and not say, hey, here's a VOD at whatever timestamp, or just look for me in somewhere else. it's hard to say that, to answer everyone and say yes or no to. So the question really is and I think you touched on this slightly earlier, where you may know someone because you've spoken to them a million times, you've roomed with them some before. You don't need to look at their reel because you know how good a job they already do. But for those that you don't know and their view still sits at 0, what happens, I guess? Or what do you do?
So I'll go over a couple of bits in turn. So with Regen, to pull back the curtain a little bit, so the way the process was, because you mentioned that I did it on my own, and that's not quite accurate, I would say.
Okay.
When it came to the initial applications, I sifted through every single one. So I would go through the process of looking through the applications, looking through the reels, looking through the VODs, and essentially I made a short list, which then I took to the rest of the team. So, and then between us, we then created our final roster of, in this case, it was 12 people, but it varies. I look at every single application, every single reel, even if I know the person. And I think that's really important because I think it is very important to try and avoid bias in a commentary roster as much as possible. And I think that it's not fair to just have like your mates and be like, well, I know them, we commentated together last time, so yeah, let's do it. To give an example of this for Regen 2024, so we had 65 odd applicants. There were only 4 people that did not have to submit an application to be considered.
Okay.
Even though I knew a lot of people that wanted to apply.
Sure.
I know people that had expressed interest to me, expressed interest to other members of the team, and I just said to them, you still need to submit an application. I need to be able to see your application. 3 of those people were myself, Samara, and Zanatti, and that's because we were on the commentary team alongside Meryl.
Yeah.
So we don't need to submit an application. We're the ones putting it all together. And the other one, who I'm not going to name, but was going through some very personal bits at the time, and I messaged them just saying, look, you're going through hell and back at the moment. Are you interested in commentating? Because if so, I'll take a note of it, because this is the last thing that's on your mind.
Yeah.
It's a very exceptional circumstance. But beyond that, everybody applied. Everybody had to apply with an application. And it didn't matter how big the commentators were. They had to apply with an application. And with that, I went through everybody's reels. I think the idea that you would submit an application and somebody not look at it, I think is pretty bad. I think that there was an interesting point in the application process where we had a rough idea on our head before we even started the application process that we'd either have 12 or 16 commentators. We didn't know yet. We didn't know our budget.
Sure.
But we knew the maximum would be a 16.
Yeah.
And it got really interesting when, so the way that I did it from my perspective is that I got the lists up here, and I went through the applications and I sorted everybody into columns, and there was yes, I'll consider you for this event. You've made the shortlist.
Yeah.
I consider you for a smaller event, but not this one. I would consider you for a smaller event with some improvements. And at this point, there's a considerable amount that you need to improve before we would. There was also a column which was I'm not sure I'm going to ask the others.
Okay.
Because,
fair.
Again, I recognize the fact that even though I am trying to be as impartial as possible, I have preferences in my commentary. I like certain commentators. I don't like certain commentators as much in terms of their commentary, not as them as people, of course.
Yeah.
And there are some commentators which I think are super duper good, and other people don't like them as much.
Yeah.
There's some the other way around where everybody seems to be hyping this person up and I don't get it. But in those situations, I think it was a list of about 8 people that I took to the other 3 and I said, I don't know what to do with these because I feel like I can't pinpoint a reason why I would or wouldn't choose them.
Yeah.
Like they're good.
Yeah.
But either I like them and I know a lot of people don't, or a lot of people really like them and I just don't get it.
Sure.
So I think that's important, and I think it's having it, like, don't get me wrong, I did the bulk of the work myself initially, but I think knuckling down to that final roster, I think it's important that everybody gets a fair shot, and I think recognizing what you do and what you don't like and being able to say, I don't think I can be impartial here, and passing it off to somebody else.
Yeah.
It can even be things like personality differences. Like, you get to know a lot of people and maybe you just aren't, like, you don't vibe with a certain person, and that's okay.
That happens.
Like, you're allowed to, like, it's the world, but I would not want that to affect how I judge their commentary.
Yeah.
And I think that if I was at the point, it didn't happen this time, thankfully, but, it was, again, it's important to know in the back of your mind that actually I don't think I can be impartial here. I'll take it to the others and, we'll come to a group decision on this.
Yeah.
But I suppose going back to your original point, I think every single application should be looked at.
Yeah.
I think that even if you keep your reel private and you only put it in applications, I mean, that's what I've done. I think I've got a link to it on my Twitter, but like, I think it's good to have it on your social media or even just like a link to it. But I think I would question any TO that didn't look at every application in some capacity, because I think you could be missing a diamond in the rough. You could be missing the next big up and comer.
Yeah. You can be missing the next scar because,
Yeah, exactly. And it's because you decided to go with what
you knew
already established.
Yeah. That's fair. That's completely fair. So back to commentators and applications. So for you specifically, Joycey, what do you look for in commentary then? Like, for people that have applied, what do you that go into the yes column, not into the maybes and I need to speak to the rest of the team, but what do you specifically, if this was your own event, not a team regen, this is Joycey TM smash event, like, what do you want to show? Who would you want to commentate on your event?
I think it depends. Thankfully, the way I see things and the way Team Regen sees things are fairly similar.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the size of the event, and I think it's a crucial thing to establish when you're looking at a commentary roster is, like, what are you trying to show off?
Sure.
So, like, we've always had this this ethos of the big regen events, your regen 2023s, your regen 2024s. We're looking for the best of the best.
Yeah.
We are looking for, you've proven yourself, you've established yourself at other events, and at the end of the day, like, you've passed the job interview. Well done. And I think the big recurring theme in the roster that we had this year was flexibility. I think it was such a relief to be able to put anyone with anyone this time round. Like, there was no fear of, well, I want to avoid that commentator with that commentator because their styles are going to clash, or I need to avoid this person with this person because, like, they don't quite get on or whatever. It was just, in my head, 12 of the strongest commentators in Europe, and obviously the US as well, big up Nerf.
Yeah.
And I could put anyone with anyone, and it was wonderful. Like, the combinations were stunning. I think when you go to those smaller events, so I'm thinking about something like Invasion, I think I like to give the up-and-comers a fair shot. Like, I think it's important to not have the same people all the time. And I think if somebody has been putting in work at other events, I think it is important to give them the shot on that bigger stage, because I think it's the only way that you're going to get new talent. And I think it's the only way that you're going to see new people rise up, because at the end of the day, they can be the best commentator in the world, but if nobody's hiring them, it doesn't make a shred of difference.
Yeah.
That was something that DeGala really pushed for. and really, really made an effort to do. And like a big example of that I remember is and he loves the story a lot, that it was a New Era, I want to say New Era 2.
Okay.
And at the time, it was Virum and Etano Circus were both applied, and they were like the two of the three like strongest UK commentators at the time, particularly Virum, of course. Yeah. Dan put them on top 32 and put Moke and Dev, who were both very good but were up and comers,
sure,
on top 8.
Ooh.
And I remember at the time, like, people were like, "That's really strange that, you know, Virum's not on top 8. Like, Virum's not on top 8. Why would you not put Virum on top 8?" And like, you know, people really questioned the decision. But then, you know, Dev for a long while, you know, and is still I mean, he's an incredible commentator regardless. But there was certainly a period of time where like he cracked the top. You know, he did top 8 at Albion 4 for goodness sake.
Yeah. And
then obviously Moke has been, you know, just going from strength to strength to strength. And it's like, if Dan hadn't given him the opportunity, not to say that it wouldn't have happened, but maybe it wouldn't have happened in the same way. Maybe it wouldn't have been as quick as it was.
Yeah.
And like, Dan did the same thing for me and Smar. Like, he noticed the effort that we were putting in over the lockdown period, and he gave us that fair shot at those smaller events. And I think that's important. I think it's important to, you know, if this isn't the biggest event you're going to run for the year, and there are people that are, you know, really trying their hardest and really grinding, you know, the commentary scene, and they, you know, you want to give them a shot on a slightly bigger stage. I think it's important to do that. And I think it's important to give those opportunities. And I do genuinely think it's part of the reason why the UK is so strong. I think because we, like, I can think of, you know, half a dozen people who would, you know, turn around and go, yeah, well, if I wasn't given that opportunity by, you know, I credit my rise certainly in part to the Gala and Team Regen.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, Smar would say the same thing. And I know others have said the same thing. And it's, again, just having those opportunities, I think, is critically important instead of going for the same old, same old. Yeah. And I think it kind of goes back to also like the static pairings as well. It's like, if you stick with the same thing, I think only you get limited growth. If you give people other opportunities, give them new environments to like grow in, I think you see the best out of people.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. That makes sense. And that's good to hear. Yeah, I think from my very limited experience with the Smash scene and Regen, the commentary pairing, anytime I was up there, like taking photos of the pairings, they were always killing it. They were always great.
It was an absolute dream of a roster. Like, it was the first time where, so once we've got all the, to kind of peek behind the curtain a bit more, once the shortlist has been picked, we do like a grid system with all the commentators along there and all the commentators vertically as well. And we put like a yes, maybe, no with every combination to see, basically, like, it helps us put our pairings together. It means that, you know, sometimes pairings can be a bit of a process of elimination. If we feel like we're only going to get the best out of someone with like one or two other people, then it kind of, you know, sets that out of the way. We didn't have to do that this time. Amazing. Because it was just like, it's just 12 really good people. It's just 12 really flexible people that have worked with a ton of other people, have got international experience. And it was more, right, what combinations do we want to see? What do we think would really, really
blow up,
you know, bring each other to life? Rather than like, what do we have to avoid to not let this crash and burn? Like, to put it in a harsh way. But it's like, it was really refreshing this time around to have a 12-person roster where it felt like no matter who we put together, it was going to be at least a good block. And with a bit of tweak, like with putting the right people together, it just, you know, sparks flew. It was so nice. It was so refreshing.
It was honestly amazing. Honestly, it was as a first Smash event, proper Smash event. It basically set a very high bar. I don't go into I go to UFA, but I don't really look into the Smash rooms just because of the amount of people there are. Like, it's just too busy, too packed. I'll stay outside. It's perfectly fine. So speaking of, creating a grid, asking other team region, like team members, of what they think of specific commentators, like, what would you look for, not in a commentator, but in building your team to help apply, to go through, to create a commentary so not to look at commentators, but look at creating a team to look at said commentary. For example, if hopefully one day, if Regen does amazingly well and is suddenly 1,500 person event with running all the Smash games ever that were ever created. They don't ever allow. Like, you would need help, right? You can't do that by yourself. That's humanly impossible. What would you look for in basically not cloning you, but cloning you so that other people could help?
I think on a basic level, I think it goes back to that level of awareness of, like, recognizing your own biases. I think is important. I think recognizing what you do and what you don't like, and, like I said, being able to go to other people and say, hey, look, I don't know about this. I think I personally don't vibe with it, but they could be quite good. I think that's important at a very basic level.
Sure.
Because, again, it's that giving every applicant a fair shot, I think, is important. And I think that is something that needs to be at the forefront of anybody who's doing commentary schedules. I think it's making sure that you give everybody that fair shot. Because, for example, also, you might have a commentator that has applied. This is the fourth event in a row that they've applied for, and you gave them feedback on that first event, and they might have improved a ton since then.
Yeah.
We've had commentators where, like, I can think of one commentator, I'm not going to name who they are, but there was a point where they were on a Team Regen event and were not picked again for about a year and a half because the block didn't go too well and they did something, they ate on the mic. If you're in Smash UK, you know who it is. And then, 3 years later, they're on the Regen roster. And in my opinion, they're one of the strongest commentators in the whole continent. And it's like, if you keep that one thing that someone did 4 years ago constantly at the forefront of your mind and you ignore those improvements, you're not doing them justice. You're not doing them a service. Like, you got to give people feedback and let them grow.
Sure.
And I think that's another important part of giving everybody that fair shot. I think in terms of things beyond that, I think it's also just having different, having that basics be the same, but then what you enjoy also being different, I think helps. I think that, what I really enjoy in a commentator and what someone like, again, what Smar enjoys in a commentator, what Zanatti enjoys in a commentator, they're all different.
Yeah.
And we all agree on a lot of different things, but we had disputes and we had discussions, like, all very civil, of course, but we were, not afraid to turn around and say, yeah, but I think this person is a lot better than you're giving them credit for, or I don't think that person quite meets the standard that we're after.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that I think it would be a lot more boring if we didn't have that. And I think it would be, I remember we did the same thing for Regen 2023 where we did I did my yes and my maybes, my no's and what have you. And somebody that was in the maybe, Digala turned around and went, actually, I want him, and I think he's going to knock it out the park. And he was a risk that we took.
Yeah.
And he was one of the shining stars of the event. He was fantastic. He was brilliant.
There we go.
And hand on heart, I don't think I would have picked him if it were just down to me.
Yeah.
But I think if it was because somebody else turned around and went, actually, he's got this potential here that I can see, I think it's important we give him a shot. I think from there, it allowed that, again, it allowed that equal opportunity. It allowed that next person to be, put into the spotlight for a bit. And so I think it's I think having a variety of tastes, I think, is important. And I think, recognizing like the same bar and the same objective that you're all working from. But then as long as you all have that in mind, like personal preferences and different potential, I think is so important because everybody has different opinions and everybody, like I said, I didn't quite maybe spot that potential that I then managed to see at the event.
Yeah.
There may have been other people that I was like, yeah, I think they're brilliant. That other people are like, oh, I wouldn't be so sure about it. It's really important, I think, that variety to allow, again, that fair shot.
No, 100%. That makes complete sense to me. That works. And yeah, sometimes you get people that suddenly, that you weren't too familiar with, be the shining star, which is great. So that's, building out a team, getting your smiles and yourselves into a group, and working out who gets on and who doesn't. You mentioned right at the start, I say right at the start, near the start, where, you were helping Team Regen, or people were sounding ideas off of you for commentary, for commentators, and you were just going, yeah, maybe, if no, and putting in your 2 cents for your thoughts on that before being not pushed, but before stepping up into your current position with Team Regen.
Yeah.
Like, how would you recommend people get to where you are now for Team Regen, for themselves, for different for other event teams, other companies? Like, you can't just say, oh yeah, just be lucky enough to be a flatmate with this person who works in the industry and go like, yeah, I guess that just be a soundboard for them. It'd be amazing, but I don't think that everyone gets that chance, right?
No, and it's kind of a difficult question to ask because I do feel like our luck was a big part of it. If I'm completely honest, I think the fact that, like, don't get me wrong, it's like, I've always tried to keep a close ear on like the state of commentary in Smash UK.
Sure.
I've always tried to do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite a tricky question to ask, if I'm completely honest with you, because I think about someone like Degala, who, again, him and I shared very similar views on things, but he wasn't a commentator. Okay. He didn't have much experience in commentary, but he really knew what stood out to people.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's working closely with teams. I think it is keeping an ear on sort of like the general scene, as it were, like keeping an eye, who are the hot up and comers, who are like the established right now, and who could, potentially go further than that. And to be honest, I think it's not really something that, and again, I've got limited knowledge, so if I am wrong on this, I would love to be corrected, but
I'll leave your comments below.
I can't think of any other UK teams that have had a specific person brought in for commentary.
Sure.
I think it is a fairly new thing.
Yeah.
Like even in like previous events, it was more like I did it to help out and because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And then it was only this time round where it was more of a like formal role, so to speak.
Yeah.
And even then, it was only for this event. Like, I don't know. Obviously, I don't really know where the direction that Team Regen's going in. Contrary to popular belief, for people that are viewing, I'm not part of Team Regen. It's a mistake a lot of people make.
Fair,
because I'm very close to Team Regen,
of course.
But I'm not part of the team.
You're
so in terms of like, yeah, like, a consultant, if you will.
Yeah,
but
consultant.
Like, I think it's, like talking to other commentators and like offering up, like it's something that I think maybe other TO teams might be, quite grateful for, because I know a lot of, from speaking to other TO teams, it's just kind of, it's not like a specific role given to, like, there's nobody that's like, oh, they're the commentary person. It's just, right, we'll get a couple of people together and we'll whack out a roster in a week or two.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of work, and it's like, I don't want to think about the number of hours I put into like helping put this roster together, but it, ask your local TO team, ask if they're like, hey, like, do you want me to like help sort the commentary out? I think it's, and then beyond that, backing that up with, keeping the eye on the pulse of, Smash UK commentary at the moment, thinking about who are the up and comers. Like, listen to people. That's a really big one, particularly if you don't have access to people's applications. Like, listen to events, listen to people that you like, recommend people.
Yeah.
Because if you turn around and go, hey, I listened to that person at this event, they could be quite good, and you could pair them with this person, and then they take a chance on that, and it works out really well, that's such a good look for you that, maybe you'll get asked again. Maybe it'll be something in a more official capacity. Again, I'm not on a TO team, so I can't vouch for certain, but that's kind of how it ended up happening for me, where it was, don't get me wrong, I had the luck of the initial opportunity, but if it wasn't for the knowledge that I had and the time that I put into it, I don't think I would have been asked in the first place. So
there you go.
I think, ask your local TOs, ask whoever's running an event, but also, keep that knowledge in mind. Keep an eye on the current state of things.
Yeah. And if you're local to London, if you're local to London, Monday Meltdowns, go down to Meltdown London in... Oh, it's not Highbury in Islington. Oh, no. Caledonian Road. There we go.
There it is.
Caledonian Road Meltdown Mondays. Generally speaking, they have a Smash event on every week. So there's some free promo there for you Meltdown guys. Joycey, with you being a consultant for Team Regen and you putting in God knows how many hours for Regen 2024, my final question for you tonight, because it is getting on a little bit and I don't want to keep you for too long. What is one thing you want people to know about your role that you don't think they would have known, and something that they should definitely have in the back of their minds if they ever want to apply for commentary, if they ever go to an event and see you, or in any event in general? Like, what is one thing you think people need to remember and know about that is not common knowledge?
One thing that's not common knowledge.
Could be anything.
I think in terms of that common knowledge, I think, again, I'm going to hark back to that. Make your application as accessible as possible. There are some people that, again, if it's hard for me to look through, if it's not a convenient thing, there is a very real chance I just go, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to look through hundreds of VODs to find your 20 minutes of commentary. Make people's lives easier and you're already going to get some success. Also, just apply for things. It's no matter how many times you get rejected, for me personally, I will always give feedback if you ask. And that is something that we did very differently this year, was that from speaking to other commentators, feedback is a huge thing. And we made a point of offering every single commentator, regardless of the outcome. And every commentator knew their outcome. Every single one knew within 2 days of us deciding the roster whether they were successful or not. Everybody got the opportunity for feedback. And I would say the one thing to keep in mind is that, for me personally, I'm always happy to listen and give feedback. I'm always happy to. And, at the end of the day, I'm happy to give advice, happy to answer any questions. So, use the resources that you have around you to get better at commentary if you so wish.
Fair. Excuse me, sorry. That's completely fair. And yeah, that's it for my question for you, Joycey. You're not going to ask me any questions, though, unfortunately. That's not the whole point of this podcast. But my final question, as always, is where can people find you if you want people to find you on social media? And is there anything you want to plug? Because, whilst you're a consultant for Team Regen, you may have some other events that you want to shout out that's up and coming. So yeah, now's more time for you to talk. If you want to follow me, my Twitter is at LF_Joycey.
I'm not the most active on social media, but, you know, I retweet funny things every now and again. I'll be more active when Team Regen start doing bits again. Attend your locals, hop on the mic, like, take the first step, get to your first tournaments, do your first open mic blocks. Like, you could be the next big commentator in 5 years' time, but if you never take that first step, you're never going to get there. That's my one bit as well. Attend your locals, get out there, commentate, jump on the mic, do it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Joycey. And guys, thank you very much for listening in. For those that have stayed here, if you've got any questions for Joycey, you know where to hit him. Or if you prefer, you can drop a comment in the box below. I say the box below. Comments are enabled in Spotify, in your podcast app, in YouTube. So wherever you're listening to this or watching this, there is a place for you to drop there. If you've got any comments for Joycey or for me, please let me know. This is a new microphone, so let me know how I sound. That'd be kind of great. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. I will catch you guys next time. Peace.